Now y'all want war. Y'all got it backwards. Y'all should want raw. Y'all should want more and more and more and more. A lot of people miss that more and more.
Money, money, money.
Hey, man.
Equality.
Rob J 10X.
Yeah, it's Gentleman's History Hour, y'all.
Hey, we back at it, man.
Hey, man, how you feeling today, man? History being made by the day, by the minute, by the second, man.
Hey, man, I'm enjoying the ride, man.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But what's been on your mind, man? I know we had a topic that we wanted to discuss.
You know,
A couple of topics, but
the thing that's on my mind right now is, you know, it's almost like, you know, if you had a daughter and she wanted to marry a guy, and you know, they're newlyweds and everything, you know, but you're not ready to jump out. But you're not gonna hate on it either. You're just kind of watching this from a distance, you know. You've seen a couple of traits in a guy that you know you might have played, but you don't want to just come salting up a new marriage like that. So I just been on the sideline, just enjoying life, man. You know.
Okay.
So you know, and you know, I can't say like I've been the most politically astute since January 20th. I saw, you know, there were some executive orders signed on day one, and you know, I understand that, you know, America is a diverse country with a lot of different groups and a lot of different interests. You know, the only thing that kind of raises my red alert sometimes is when I feel like maybe my intelligence is being insulted. You know, and you know, when you start, when you want to get points off of putting Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill. You know, when you look like you did, you know, I shut down federal prisons when you just shut down funding to a kind of small amount of them. It seems like we're getting a lot of Lil Will CDs and posters right now. Hey, we're getting them Lil Will CDs, like, so, you know, just like, hey.
You're getting the Chrysler, not the Phantom.
It's like that now.
A good Chrysler Bentley.
Yeah. So you roll up next to the Bentley and say, whoa.
Yeah.
So symbolism.
Yeah, exactly. Man.
You know, and starting with Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill, which I don't even know. I can't lie to you, man. I don't even know how that decision was made. I don't know how that decision was made. We're gonna pick Harriet Tubman to be the face of the $20 bill. I mean, it's still floating around. From my understanding, it was started. You know, Trump said, "Hey, it's not a political issue that I want to put in the forefront." So he kind of tabled it.
Yeah.
And initially with his Treasury Secretary at that time, he was saying it would probably take till 2028. Okay. And now we have a new President-elect Joe Biden is saying, okay, I want to speed up the process. And he has his new Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, and I want to get into her a little later too, because it all ties into the money game in the politics of the game. But honestly, man, when we first started talking about symbolism and then talking about the money because of the Harriet Tubman, that's the new thing that's out, just trying to get pushed. It just made me think, man, just how my motor is like, money. Let's, you know, where does the process of money, and I know it's not the history of money show, but it did raise my eyebrow. And how did we get here with money? And just from the little quick research, man, which was funny. One thing that I discovered is the concept of why living people are not on dollar bills.
Hey, that was a good one. Hey,
money.
that was a good one, man.
You know, it's the Civil War is it's a lot of, when you go down that money trail in history, wars and money have always went hand in hand. In the history of money, it's all linked to some war. But around 1866, the guy named Spencer Clark, man. So Spencer, in some accounts, he was the chief of what they call the Bureau of Engraving and Printing.
Okay. And
in another title that I saw for him was the Superintendent of the National Currency Bureau.
Okay.
So around this time in 1866, man, he was in charge of, they had fractional money. And this was during the Civil War, so people would hoard coins because of the precious metal.
Okay.
And what they did at that time to avoid the crisis, the Treasury introduced paper money to represent a cent instead of a dollar amount. So you had like 5 cent, 10 cent.
So the coins were worth more than the dollars. I mean that.
Well, they didn't want a shortage of the precious metals because they were using a lot of the metal for the weapons in war.
Okay.
So they converted it to paper.
Okay.
These fractional amounts you had instead of the metal coins, you had paper. Like, okay, 5 cent. It was just representation of the paper. So I want to say with him, he was on the 5 cent. So they increments of 3, 5, 10. So what he did was he put his image on the 5 cent note. They just called it notes because that's all money is anyway. When you turn it on the back, it's a Federal Reserve note. It's just a note. So this guy, man, Spencer Clark, how he put his face on there is they were looking at the William Clark, because the Lewis and Clark adventure, the explorer, that he got a crazy history that why he was even considered to be put on money, vicious slave owner, all that, but I guess that didn't matter in that time.
Yeah,
we're talking about 1866. Yeah. So this guy, he's Spencer Clark. So they say, hey, we're gonna put Clark's face, but they were talking about Clark from the Lewis and Clark, the exploration.
I don't know.
Yes. And this may be a faux pas in history, but he took it as, I'm putting my face on this. So he literally put his face on the money.
If I was a white man in the 1800s, I probably would have been Spencer Clark, because
Instead of William Clark, he put his face on the money. So what happened is they had to discontinue that. The money came out. Remember, he was a chief, he was a superintendent. So the money came out. A congressman named Russell Thayer. Mm-hmm. So he amended an appropriations bill to say, and this is what he said. And this is also going on around 1866. Hereafter, no portrait or likeness of any living person shall be engraved or placed on any bonds, securities, notes, or postal currency of the U.S.
I can see that though, because then it turns. That's kind of like if you're on an actual, monetary tender, and the things that people do for that tender, at that point you're almost like a deity, So people, if like you paid somebody with 10 EQs, you know what I'm saying? Like that's like. That's like so I could that rule makes sense to me.
Yeah. So he lost. Okay, of course, he lost that position after that happened.
He went. But I bet I would have kept all them notes though. That would have. That's the ultimate. That's the.
They have your face. That one time in history, you had your face. Yeah. And he actually changed the course of history. But and taking it up to Harriet Tubman, I don't know who decided whether Harriet Tubman, but it goes back to symbolism. Yeah. And, when we came up with the topic and we were talking about symbolism and tying it back to history, one thing me and Sav were also talking about is being aware of the symbolism that's already on the dollar that was taken from us, Nile Valley contributions, ancient Egypt, the pyramids. It's a lot of symbolism that's already printed on money that we don't recognize. So a lot of times, a lot of our symbolism that we had is being co-opted.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of interesting. You think about it. Why is that? It's never even covered in school. We never social studies. We never talked about what was on the back or any of we were required to take Spanish for 2 years, but no one ever told us what the Latin means.
And from what I understand, they're still gonna put Andrew Jackson is on the $20 bill. They're still supposed to have his face on the back. And the irony of Andrew Jackson is that he wanted to abolish paper money at the time, and he ended up on the $20 bill.
I sure hope Andrew Jackson wasn't just a reckless slave owner too, because that's just a bad look. So you're gonna put the slave owner on the other side with the underground.
An abolitionist.
Boy, America, mess up.
And then that's also the irony is that Harriet Tubman was an abolitionist, and then you're putting her face on some currency on this note, which to me is a little bit of a contradiction, especially in this day and age. And money is more digital, cryptocurrency. Yeah. Paper money is probably mainly going to be used in the black market, to be honest with you.
Man, it just seems like Well, to be fair, with so far with Biden in office, I know that he probably came in there like, it's a fire going on, and so he had to extend certain things. There's a pandemic going on, but I think, and it's not even really about a president. I think it's about kind of our expectation. It seems like a lot of times we go for these like symbolic narratives, just like, early on, it might be like episode 3 or 4, we were talking about, hey, we were celebrating a Confederate, monument being taken down while the LBGT was getting a Supreme Court ruling. It's always like,
what does the symbolism lead to actual substance?
Yeah. And it's like, it's almost like we have, just real low requirements as to like what we want. And I'm not saying that we should be just just unrealistic with the things that we expect, but I think we really are easily won. If
we get taken for granted.
Definitely, because there's no one else that I know of, at least, that you can win over with a couple of tweets. A pandemic was going on. Ice cream company says, hey, rest in peace, or we stand with Black Lives. It's like, I can appreciate the sentiment, but that don't mean nothing. That's just words,
Yeah.
I had an experience happen to me this week in Goodwill. Now I've been, practicing, trying to practice wisdom and serenity this week. It's my virtue. So I always have this thing where I really get mad when I'm in line, because like for the life of me, I always get behind someone who either moving slow, forgot their card, the whole nine. So I'm in line, right? And normally I get loud, man, get another cashier up here. But I was like, I'm not gonna do that. So what happened was, I'm sitting there. I was throwing the same tantrum in my head though. So fundamentally, even though I was standing still and all this, nothing had changed. I had to really tell myself, okay, if I don't practice it in my mind, I'm not really doing nothing. You know what I'm saying? And I think a lot of times, a lot of these symbolism is like, it's me in that line. Yeah, I'm not yelling, but I'm still yelling in my head. So what serenity was gained, And I think, if these feelings, aren't, if it's like kind of like the microwave effect of social media, right? I don't have to write the book. I could just announce that I'm writing the book, and everyone's gonna congratulate me. I feel like that's kind of what goes on sometimes with our expectations. But I don't know. I don't want to turn into old negative Bob who just ain't happy with anything. But that's how I feel, man.
I guess one of the questions is, when does the symbolism actually lead to concrete change, or are some people just happy with symbolism? Because it does have its place.
Yeah.
But one of my things with, with looking at the symbolism is knowing where that symbolism came from. Like we said, we talked about the obelisk, which is in the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. at the mall, which it's a symbol taken from ancient Kemet, Africa.
Okay.
They called it the Tekanu, and then you go to Herman Park, you see replicas of it, and it's a symbol of something sacred, but it's been taken, and people see it and they just look at it for what it is without knowing the deep history behind it. So there's some symbolism that we have to get educated on. Now that's not an example of it could lead to change in your mentality and want to dig deeper, but for us here in the year of 2021, we get impatient. Like you said, standing in that line, we get impatient with just these gestures of symbolism, and a lot of times it only comes around during election time.
Yeah, and
that's when that symbolism comes out.
Yeah, and then the disconnect, like even our podcast photographer Derek, he was telling me when he went to Rome, the statues were black. The thing they're looking at. So it's like the crazy part about the symbolism is that we've been disconnected, but a lot of non-black people, they do know what it means, and to be disconnected from it, like, the analogy I always use is like, if the MLB just stopped playing for like 15 years and then, 2035 or whatever, there's an MLB, these kids play for the Yankees and the Yankees suck. and they don't know anything about Babe Ruth. They don't know anything. They just think the Yankees are just a perennial loser.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, that's how I feel like with us, like not that we're perennial losers, but in a sense, like we don't realize we've been disconnected from the championships and the great things that we've done. And you know, I don't know when that started, because it seems like, you know, just since we traveled down this journey, you know, Huey had a clear initiative, Malcolm had a clear initiative. You know, I don't.
Speaking of Malcolm, even the X became a symbol.
Yeah, no, that's, you know, and then even the dream speech, you know, it's just and you know, Scholar Fred had made a great point. He said that symbols are stronger communication than language. You know, and
you see a symbol, you know what that. If you see a cross, hey, you may be from somewhere else, I may be from somewhere else. We may not. You may be Mexico. You speak Spanish. I'm here. You see the cross. We recognize that symbol. Now, it may mean different things to us, but we recognize that symbol.
Yeah, if you're from Brazil but you've been driving for 10 years, and we put you in a car here, you're gonna realize real quick that when that thing gets red, stop. You know, it's a certain, you know, so, you know, and then that gets to the level of, you know, is it something, you know, is this some high level programming going on, or, you know, and I said that they know. I don't know that, you know, the quote unquote they, how many of them know. It may be something it could be something that has just been passed down, and for you know, even they don't, or I don't know if maybe it is, you know, I'm sure there's some highest order that.
You have symbols and you have symbolism. You have symbols and then the symbolism of what this, you know, sometimes you have a symbol which is more for marketing. It's like a logo. It's just, okay, that's just a logo. That's just a symbol. Okay, Mercedes-Benz. That's just a symbol. And then sometimes you have symbolism behind something. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, if you look at a cross, yeah, that's a symbol, but then there's some symbolism behind it. It's like looking at the Ankh, right? The Ankh, it's a symbol, but it's the symbolism behind it tells the story. And the cross could have come from the symbol of the Ankh, you know. So it just kind of ties together. But one of the things that, speaking of tying together, is the symbolicness of the Confederate flag. And recently, of course, January 6th, they breached the Capitol in Washington, D.C. And one of the things a guy had was a big Confederate flag that he was carrying around. Yeah. I want to say they even stuck the flag in one of the statues to make it seem like the flag was sticking out. So that Confederate flag has been a symbol that's been around since the 19th century, man. We saying 1861 started the Civil War when, you know, the Confederates wanted to secede from the Union. Yeah. They needed a flag. The Union was carrying a United States flag, which is just, once again, flag has a lot of symbolism in it.
Means a lot.
It's an identifier.
I know. I didn't get a chance to go back and double back this one source who said this to stand on it definitively, but I was reading somewhere a person was saying that flag never actually made it to the Confederate. The flag that people called the Confederate flag.
Yeah, they had different versions of it. The flag that we see with the X. Yeah. That's on the Dukes of Hazzard car and all of that stuff that became pop culture to a certain extent, that we were watching it as kids and not kind of being blind to the symbolism of that Confederate flag. But there were different versions. Okay. And just from my research, initially they had the stars and bars, they had the circle, but it looked too much like the American flag. So when they were at war, because your flag in wars, that's your identifier. It's just like now cats on the street say they waving a flag. Yeah. It's the identifier in war. They were getting confused because it looked too much like the American flag. So then they had another iteration of the Confederate flag. They had a few iterations until they finally settled on the one that we see now with the X across it. You know, but the person that's responsible for the one we see now, his name is William P. Miles, or William Porcher Miles. He's the guy that designed that around that time. So it's weird when you look at history and you look at it from the objective standpoint of let me get this side, this side, this side. For us, black people see that flag and we see racism and terror.
Yeah.
You talk to some people, they'll say, "Oh, that flag represents states' rights."
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what the Confederate side were fighting, of course, with the states' rights. You want to continue slavery.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But they didn't want the federal government in their business. Just keep it, local and state.
Most definitely.
So that flag represented something to them. And even though, in my mind, it's the loser flag. You lost the war.
That's the only flag where that's the only war I've seen a person who lost celebrated so strongly.
So then it comes back into prominence around the KKK started using it, and so we started associating that flag, that symbol, the symbolism of that flag. We started associating that with white supremacy because the KKK was carrying that flag. Remember, they had the American flag. Then they started carrying once it became heavy down south. They were using that flag again. And then around 1948, when Strom Thurmond was running for president, he opposed civil rights. So then you had the Dixiecrats coming in. Then they brought the flag back into prominence around that time. So they were carrying that flag. You had the Republicans, Democrats, and then the Dixiecrats. And Strom was like, racist. Strom was like, hey, I'm opposing civil rights and all that. And the supporters of Strom, they were carrying that Confederate flag.
They gave it a
But Rob, I ain't mean to interrupt you.
No,
I get excited.
No disclaimers. No disclaimers. Just go, man.
Us, symbolism, symbols, Confederate flag. We know the history. So Mississippi was still flying that as their state flag.
Okay.
Georgia, for a time, was still flying that. And I'm connecting Georgia because now we got to talk about hip hop.
Yeah.
And how some things, with hip hop, we give the whole, we can flip stuff, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, we take nigga and we make it, N-I-G-G-A
never
or
ignorant,
whatever.
never ignorant
we come
getting
in
goals
with all these
accomplished.
acronyms.
Yeah.
Some, hey, gotta call them out, man. Andre 3000, Ludacris. What's the guys, Lil Jon and them? And I'm pretty sure it's more primarily from
Kanye.
Georgia.
Kanye not from Georgia, but he tried to.
Who else?
Kanye had a merchandise shirt with a Confederate flag at one point.
They were bringing. They weren't putting any spin on it.
Yeah.
They were actually wearing in the Sorry Miss Jackson video. I think Andre has it on the belt buckle in that video. Yeah. Ludacris had a whole outfit of the Confederate flag. Now they were trying to use it as it represents rebellion, but it's still that symbol. When someone sees it, they're not looking at it from the perception of how. I guess what I'm saying, people try to change symbols to fit their narrative. And I don't know if that's one of the symbols.
Would you consider that kind of similar to like a Amber Rose slut walk, like a reclaiming of something?
No, because you're not reclaiming something that, like, that flag. It's a lot of death and destruction behind that flag.
Okay, on that.
And for you to say you're trying to reclaim that when there are elders or certain people, that triggers something when they see that. So why would you want to try to rebrand that? You're black, you're creative. Come up with something that represents you. Marcus Garvey, they came up with the red, black, and green flag. He didn't say, "Oh, we're gonna take the American flag and re-rock it."
Garvey, that was his special brother.
But that's what I'm saying. We had to say, okay, this color represents this. Hey, we need our own flag to represent us. Instead of saying we're gonna take the American flag and start wearing that and say, hey, the American flag represent. No, come up with something. If you want to be a rebel, why wear that? Because someone is looking at you. If I'm at home and I'm teaching my kid, if I'm a racist and I'm at home, then I'm like, oh, look at those fools, look at those idiots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. That definitely sends. I just don't see how you come to that conclusion as a sign of rebel. But let me ask you this on the flip side, like for me, when my aunt, she was in med school and she seen a guy, and I'll never forget this guy. His name was Canigliaro. I love Canigliaro.
That's a hell of a name.
Hey, Canigliaro. But this guy was like, he was like, look, it ain't nobody on a different world that has sauce that can hang. He was just like just everything. I wanted to be like him. I wanted to be positive. I wanted to be like, I was like, so he lit a fire at a time in my life where it was like, I wasn't really seeing a lot of young, brothers that looked like me that were, fighting that good fight. So just even that time that I spent with him, I never forgot him, you know what I'm saying? Like, and, so on the other side, and one of the things I got to give, Jason, his, so I had some offline conversation with him, and he was pointing out that, like, it matters when you see somebody who looks like you in certain positions. And I will say, I can say in my life, I've never done anything that I couldn't reference a black person who had done it before. From the building that I live in to every job, everything. It was like, oh, maybe I can do that. So it's like, as much as I don't like, kind of, things that really don't push the meter, as far as impact wise directly, I can't say that I haven't been a person who symbolism has inspired as well. So,
yeah, you bring up a good point, because that brings us to people being used as symbols. Now, we've talked about symbolism and how it's portrayed in the form of like flags or money or statues. We go all the way back to ancient Kemet and look at the pyramids and the symbols that were inside, or hieroglyphics and all that. But what about the people that are used as symbols? I mean, Jesus Christ could be used as a symbol. Some people may not think that Jesus Christ was an actual person or a name Jesus, but it becomes a symbol of resurrection, a symbol of whatever you want to associate with it. There are people that are symbolic. Yeah. I don't know if it's the same way where we say we kind of get finessed with the symbol of people.
I think the only thing that's kind of different with our people who have reached those heights is, we're the only ethnicity that when somebody reaches like a certain height, it's like, it's almost like I owed you $50 and like, all right, man, now I gave you 50, so we good now. And that's kind of like how a lot of the energy was like after an Obama gets elected, after, and now here I'm going to sound real hypocritical, and this is maybe classic tripolar Bob, but look, on the flip side, I don't get excited when somebody tells me a kid from their neighborhood is going to Harvard. My response literally is, "Oh, we got a guy going to Harvard." So you got one kid going, like, there's 40 kids in the neighborhood.
Yeah. So you're past the one. This celebrating the first. Like
I'm not a one
singular symbolism.
Yeah, I'm happy for that kid individually, but to me, no, we had one kid go to stand. Like, what about the other 76? So to me, like, and I think one of the things that we practice in the black community, and I think it kind of goes back to the times when we had to practice that, when there was like, hey, everybody couldn't go to Hampton, so we had to all, hey man, I'm 50 years old. I'm a sharecropper. I'm not gonna be edgy, but I can give $2 to Booker. Yeah. So there was a time when that was actually needed. But when that morphs into like, we get to the fast forward, and it's modern day time, and it's like Hove is like, but all the hustlers love it just to see one of us make it. No, I'm not. No, I'm not a love it just to see one of us make it.
He was a symbol for the Brooklyn Nets. He only owned 0.015%, but he was.
We ain't gonna talk down on the GOAT now, man.
He made a few millions off of it, but I mean, the perception was that I'm the owner of the team.
But even the NFL, bringing him in, it's almost like when someone wants to either calm us down, appease us, but for the most part, calm us down. America as an institution handles black people as if we really are feminine energy. And I say feminine energy in the sense that they try to like calm us down with like warmth, showing that they care. Showing they never handle us with like logic and reason, like, okay, this, okay, like that, you know. So and then outside of that, you know, it is kind of strange to me how, you know, whenever a growing group of, you know, black people start feeling a certain type of way and start making a certain type of noise, what inevitably is done is a more esteemed black person is brought in to tell those black people, this Wakanda. So it's
symbols,
like,
it's
kind of
using people to symbolize things, like, you know, Barack was used as the symbol of hope. He ran on that, and people kind of equate the symbolism of hope with that. My opinion is, you know, symbolism, and we're saying, can symbolism lead to change? It's about, are we just content with the symbol, or do we want to fight for more? Yeah, putting Harriet Tubman on a $20 bill, symbolism. Okay, you see, it may make a kid want to research Harriet Tubman. A lot of times, I never really paid that much attention to who was on money. To be honest, I never was like, look. I don't think I ever looked at money and said, man, why is it not a black person on this money?
Well, let me ask you this, because you came up in an environment where, you know, obviously I'm not saying like you didn't have great support system or anything like that, but you weren't like a second, third, fourth generation architect, you know.
No.
You weren't like in high school, you know, just hey man, he's destined to be art. But what lit a fire in you to say that, hey, you know, I'm going to do something like, and I'm assuming you didn't have a reference architect for the majority.
Yeah, it wasn't a lot of the symbolism of a black, you know, professional architecture was not there when I was a kid. I mean, you watch TV, you didn't see it around that time. You didn't see it, so it was almost like a figment of your imagination to a certain extent. But the drive was, you know, the funny thing is, I can't remember when I first heard the word, but it was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. And then being able to draw, people would say, oh, you should be an architect, because they assume being able to draw equated with architecture. They didn't say artist. I would say, oh, artist.
Yeah.
And then I would hear people use the word architect, and I was like, oh, okay, well, yeah, that's what I want to be as a kid. But I thought the prerequisite was you just have to know how to draw, because that's what people associate the profession.
Wow, yeah, that's
just being able to draw.
Shout out to Studewood for telling you that. Wow, that's, you know what I'm saying.
These are the older people.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Because they understood it as kids. If you didn't hear it, it's almost like if you don't hear it, it doesn't exist. So if you don't hear it, so then you have to, you know, sometimes become that symbol of hope for other people. So it's not necessarily a bad thing if, but that's more of like, you know, being a trailblazer.
But that's a very acute eye, you know, because normally in the hood, all we hear is, oh, you could argue you be a lawyer, but that's where, you know, it kind of.
Yeah, because if somebody says, well, you know, oh, I want to be an artist. Oh man, artists don't make no money.
Yeah.
Well, oh, you should be an architect. You know, you could draw.
But was there like an individual person who you saw who was like, okay, when I saw this person do it, because that's my whole life is just I saw someone.
There was no example in front of me. I had to create whatever I imagined in my head for it to be. It was no, this person is the person. Now, as I got older, I had mentors that would tell me that. Now, during the time that they were coming up, it was even harder because it was so few. So that, you know, just having that image. You know, and I guess it all ties back into the symbolism of it is what symbolizes an architect, a lawyer, a doctor. When you tell somebody to close their eyes and think of this, the symbol that comes in their head, the perception.
But let's say, you know,
a lot of times it may not be a person that looks like them is what I'm saying.
Hey, like my favorite podcast co-host of all time, Evan Rich. Let's go deep, man. Look. But think about this though, like in 9th grade, you're at a high school that's separating you from the community, putting you around other kids and saying you're in an engineering program. like that, just the placement in that, regardless of how the performance goes, that's saying something on a subconscious level.
Yeah, it was symbolized, and Sal could attest to this. It was symbolized as you're smart, you're smarter with an ER. Certain people would say you're with the smart kids.
Yeah.
So, okay, you looked at that as that's a symbol of you're smart. But what does that make you? So it's like you're looking at it from one vantage point. I'm like, okay, so if you're saying I'm with the smart kids, so are you saying you're with the dumb kids?
Well, I mean, in a sense, yes. And this is a sad thing, but especially growing up in the 80s, everything, almost every diss given to a black kid about being like white was an indirect compliment. And that's kind of sad, right? If you made good grades, you're a white boy. If you spoke, English a certain way, like no one has ever called, a kid who was dumb, didn't know the answers to the test, a white boy in the hood.
What do you think that symbolizes?
Self-hatred. Self-hatred, like the fact that, because why would you like, it would be, it would almost make more sense if there was something that we felt like was below us that you would call someone you didn't like. But,
when you say self-hate, when you grow up and all the symbols of greatness is associated with whiteness. So the image of Superman. So the image of this, and when you look in the mirror, that's why it's a big deal to see Black Panther.
Yeah.
Right? For a lot of kids. And they're like, oh, finally. Which you shouldn't. Your dad should be your first Black Panther, or your grandfather should be your first Black Panther. But when everything you saw that's associated or the symbol of greatness looks like something that's the opposite of you, then that self-hatred seeps in, and then it starts to come out in other ways to where you associate the symbol of greatness as, you one of them. And that's that lack of knowledge of self, and that lack of knowledge of self can breed that self-hatred that's inside of you, because you've never seen anything to be proud of that looks like you. And a lot of people, man, are still walking around with those blinders on to not know that, hey, man, when we talk in certain names that we say on this show, or and just read like a Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization, to know where these symbols came from. Or reading the ISIS papers and understanding the symbolism and taking it to an even deeper level and understanding the psychology of certain symbols and the depths that it plays on our psyche. You could, in that book, she's breaking down the symbol of the Christmas tree, the symbol of the gun. I mean, all these different symbols from a psychiatric standpoint.
Man, I was talking to a friend of mine about especially, in the communities I was around, black communities growing, sex was introduced in such a predatory nature. Like just the words that was used, from I beat, I smashed, I hit. I never heard nobody my whole life say, man, I made love to that queen last night. I never heard that. It was always like, derogatory. Like almost as if, I left I did something. I manipulatively convinced her to give me her most precious thing because I'm that. That was kind of how, and that was like, and that was a lot of what the archetype was, especially, when we were young and not to veer too far left, but I think with a lot of the imagery we're given, we didn't have a suspension of disbelief. First song I ever remember memorizing in my life was Snoop Dogg, B ain't, but, so when you're that young, we don't understand that it's fiction. We think that we think that Tupac really has his fofo and he's making sure kids don't grow, I think like a lot of that.
What do you think some of that symbolizes, man, in the music and all of that?
Music is dangerous because it's a vibrational affirmation over and over again. So if it's just like, if I just, F the mother hitters, cause I'm down for my hitters. F the mother hit. That's an affirmation. Like, look, my affirmation in the morning, I approve of myself. I approve of myself. I approve. But look, you put theirs, F the mother, cause I'm down for my. So like, you start just repeating that all day. Like, it's really programming. Like, for all the great that hip hop has done, one day we have to really have an honest conversation about some of the things,
Well, I mean, the symbolism of gangs and we said the flag or a bandana, and the red and the blue started to symbolize. It had, consequences to that symbolism, what this symbolizes. Yeah. People get certain tattoos, and it's like, hey, this symbolizes something.
Yeah.
People take a certain oath. When people pledge fraternities and sororities, it's a symbol. Yeah. It's something. It's something that people have. I mean, it's all around us. It's everywhere. And we started this just talking about the $20 bill. And on a further episode, I want to do a deeper dive on just the Treasury Secretary, man, and conflicts of interest when we talk about money, because all these people play a part in what would happen in the changing of the face of money.
Most definitely.
But starting with Harriet and looking at what I would think is some contradictions behind that, and where it looks like certain things are being done to appease us, but not actual change. Hey, it's like asking, you want Harriet Tubman on $20 bill, or do you want some $20 bills in reparations?
But I'm spending them Tubmans though. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure taking them. But I do want to clarify one thing too, man. I do think that President Biden does have the opportunity to be one of the most transformative presidents of all time, and I do wish him the best. So I don't want I want the best for us as a people, and I can't help it. I'm just the type of person. I never been able. I always had to know the details. I just never. You couldn't just give me but it's not from a sense of like, not wanting the best for him and for us, because we need a benefit. Like, man, come with it. So
yeah, before we wrap it up, I would just say sometimes there are symbols that's just there, but everything has always been planned. I don't think anything is arbitrary. So I would tell people, man, if y'all can, you can start with the Browder Files or Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. It's a good starter that breaks down some of the symbolism to give you that sense of pride in knowing that some of the symbols that we see every day, it comes from us, and it had a deeper meaning to it. Yeah. So where when we started talking, when people started throwing out symbolism and saying, "Oh, we're gonna do this for y'all," it's like, nah. Now it's time for us to demand even more. Yeah. We're past symbolic victories. And we need some concrete change.
And on the history, solutions he could dress it up and be user friendly about. I'm gonna say this: it takes intent and it takes work. And I used to try to be all with this, but look. It's people, like I said today, it's people that ain't sat not damn foot in Chicago, and they can tell you the story of O Block, Wick City, STL, Kyra, Wooski. If you can learn that, you can put that intent behind learning your own history if you want to do it. And if you don't want to do it, just say it ain't important to you, and that's cool, But I'm not sugarcoating no more. Like, it's work,
Yeah, balance the symbolism of your people, and then keep your other eye open on being played and being finessed with just symbolism with no concrete change. This is Gentleman's History Hour, man. Thank y'all for tuning in. You want to tell them, hey, we may be on location?
We we're evolving, and we'll be actually connected with a brilliant artist doing some future episodes on location in February. So you may miss us for a week. But, we not gone. We just in the lab working, improving, getting things even better.
Oh, yeah. Salute, y'all. Be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, tell us what you like, what you love, what you hate. all of the above. It's only gonna make us, and it's gonna make you better.
Hey, one love, Canigliero, man. I hope your life is blessed, man. Hey, I love Canigliero.
And shout out to Robert Hodge with Collective for the Culture.
That's it.
The Black Buddha Agency.
Yeah.
Everybody involved with that movement, man. We're gonna be on site with them, man. And one love. Peace.
Hey, one love, man.
If you're watching this on YouTube, man, hey, y'all, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. This is Gentleman's History Hour.